And now, a word from
Infirmary Media.
Hey dudes and dudettes, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast, a podcast chock full of everything nostalgic about the 80s, 90s, and more, with nostalgic celebrity interviews and fact-filled movie commentaries. I'm your host, Carlos. This episode, we're taking a look back at this year with online review shoutouts and celebrity interviews, along with our plans for 2019. So I hope everyone is enjoying their holidays while throwing together those last minute New Year's resolutions. Fingers crossed that you make it out of January. I normally set the bar pretty low for myself. Usually I'll say that I will change my underwear every day, or maybe I'll just actually wear underwear every day, something like that. So set the bar low so you can keep it consistent throughout the year. But really just want to thank everyone who's been tuning in recently and over the past 2 years as we're going strong. Getting into the third year here and looking to make the podcast even more enjoyable. I've been looking into some new equipment for some better audio. I know sometimes the audio may not be up to par. Do apologize. It's kind of one of those things that you got to invest some money into, and you got to make sure you're buying the right equipment and things like that. So I've been procrastinating when it comes to things like that, but ready to pull the trigger so we get some top tier quality audio here for you guys. And of course, adding to the list of upcoming celebrity guests that we'll be announcing later in the episode. People from movies and TV shows that we grew up watching. So I can't wait to announce that a little bit later. But really the first thing I want to get into, it is that time of year where we want to pat ourselves on the back by shouting out those who've taken the time to write these awesome online reviews for the podcast throughout this year. It really means the world to us. I can't thank you guys enough for doing that. We've had some amazing reviews that I really want to go through here. So here we go, just kind of jumping into it. The first one was named Always a Good Time. This is from For Better or Worse podcast, another great podcast you guys should definitely go check out. What they said is, who doesn't love a good throwback? I love a good nostalgic conversation, and that's basically what these guys do best. Download and listen. You won't regret it. Well, thank you. Really do appreciate that. Next one we have is Hilarious from James V 2017. He says, an awesome trip down memory lane. Love these guys. Thank you. Of course, it is the goal for each podcast to just, let everyone just kind of tune out from what's going on in your everyday life and try to remember some of the cool things that happened back in the day. Next one we have is from Lindsay at 33 Pulp. Of course, another awesome podcast I was honored to be a guest on. So go check out the 33 Pulp podcast. And what Lindsay said was, while Be Kind Rewind does several things well, for me, it does a great job of A, reminding me of my childhood, and B, historicizing pop culture with contemporary context. So it's obvious there's a ton of research and knowledge put into each episode, like who else considered to be cast in Jurassic Park, Harrison Ford. So keep up the good work, or keep up the great work. So thank you, Lindsay. Yes, tons of research goes into each episode. Sometimes it sounds like it's coming off the top of my head, and yes, there's a lot of useless knowledge stored up there, but there are a few tidbits that we have notes for, that we've done research for, so we can just make sure that it's not just us conversating about what we think about things. We want to make sure we have the facts. We want to make sure that we're giving listeners everything that's factual about the things we're talking about, so it's not just hearsay or we're just speculating. We want to give you the details, because as much as we were fans of a lot of things growing up, you don't really know all the details about it. Some of the behind the scenes stuff, or like Lindsay had brought up, when it comes to casting, there's a lot of people who are considered for major roles that some of your favorite movies, or definitely other actors who are considered for those roles. So we just like to give everybody a little bit extra info, so you have a little conversation piece for yourself when you're talking to people. So Lindsay, thank you for the great review. Next one we have is from Bill M 34002, says, subscribed. Great trips down memory lane with engaging and knowledgeable hosts, interesting guests, and great production quality. Subscribed. Thanks, Bill. Really do doing our best to improve the production quality. Like I said, I know sometimes maybe not quite up to par, but we're doing our best here to make sure it's clean enough so everyone can enjoy all these the interviews, especially like we talked about, that we'll be announcing here soon. So then now we have Teddit, master of their universe. You probably thought I was going Metallica. These bros do good research on classics and currents. Pop culture and nostalgia weave seamlessly with this relaxed delivery. A must listen. So thanks, Teddit. Definitely a fan of some Metallica. So even if you weren't going Metallica, that's where I went. But yes, I would have to dedicate years of sitting in front of the TV and watching lots of I love the 80s, I love the 90s, those type of shows, and just kind of absorbing that information throughout my life, as opposed to, math formulas and things that would be useful in my scholastic area. But everything else in regards to the podcast is coming to play, so I do appreciate that. So next few that we have Jamie Ski says, totally radical podcast. Carlos knows his stuff about the 80s, 90s, and has put together a tubular show. So much fun to reminisce with his episodes each week. So thank you. Yes, it is sometimes a little bit of a stretch to try to get out an episode every week. I will admit there are some episodes out there that came literally at the last minute to the idea or the coordination of getting a guest or something. Just because sometimes, you plan out as much as you can, try to come up with an idea. I always have a list of topics, celebrities and movies that we can get into. Sometimes you get to the end of those, or maybe it just doesn't work out the schedule, or things change last minute. You think you're going to be recording with somebody and they can't make it. You got to switch out that same day, which is my fault. I sometimes don't give myself enough time to record and edit, usually a few days. Some people give themselves up to weeks, a week or so. I'm like a few days. So maybe that's something to do with the audio. Who knows? But definitely looking to get a little more organized this year, so that we are able to, make sure we get all the audio corrected and make sure that everything's up to par before we get it out. And of course, like I said, there will be a few fillers here and there. We try not to call them those, but we'll just be real with you. There's a couple fillers here and there, but just hope that the content, just keeps you entertained every time you listen to it. So yeah, we're going to keep doing it every Throwback Thursday. So keep tuning in. Last few reviews that we have here. We got excellent nostalgia discussion from Acoustic Wonder. Says Carlos gets a lot of great interviews with stars from beloved movies and TV shows, and always makes things fun to listen and informative. So highly recommend this show. So thank you, Acoustic Wonder. The interviews definitely are one of the more fun aspects of the podcast. It takes a little time sometimes, of course, with the planning of the regular episodes, lining up, scheduling for these celebrity interviews. They're a task on their own as well. Sometimes, like I said, you may schedule somebody, then they get back to you last minute. You got to do a completely different episode that week, or sometimes I'll message people back in January and they won't get back to you until March or April. All of a sudden, they maybe don't check their Facebook messages or their Twitter messages. So it's an interesting task to get these interviews scheduled, but I enjoy it as soon as the runner's high that I get every time I finally lock somebody in, that they're, yes, I'll come do the podcast. Let's get this scheduled. I'm like, just get that excitement flowing through me so I can start thinking all the awesome questions, things we can get into, maybe try to come at a different angle for things. So the interviews, sometimes it can be an obstacle, but it's definitely worth it every time. So last two that we have here from Back in Time podcast, they're saying nostalgia at its finest. I'm a big fan of interviews. Carlos does a great job of being engaging and picking guests that we love to hear from. These guests that I've picked out and that we've interviewed, they're people that I personally would want to talk to. And I'm not really kind of catering to any sort of demographic or what may be happening in the times. I'm just trying to find people that I enjoyed watching growing up, that I was like, man, I love that show. I wonder what it was like working with all these other people, or what the whole process, somebody behind the scenes. So that's basically my my goal, is just to pick their brains and just find out things that what would Nickelodeon 11-year-old Carlos want to hear, or watching movies at his babysitter's, what would he want to know about this particular movie from this actor. So it has been fun to kind of do my own kind of picking in regards to who I want to talk to and what we want to get into, what the listeners might be interested in hearing, what I want to hear about. So a good mixture. So definitely, like I said, the interview is one of the more fun aspects. And the last one that we got from Drew Zamkin, good old Drew. This podcast is a keeper. I've been listening to this podcast for a little while now, and Carlos doesn't disappoint. His interviews are excellent, like his more recent one with Matt Doherty from the Mighty Ducks movies. He has great knowledge and a variety of movies and pop culture, and also appears as a guest host on other podcasts, adding instant value. Also has great genuine joy for these topics, which you can hear in his voice. So I can't recommend this podcast enough. So Drew, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yes, we did have Matt Doherty on from Mighty Ducks. Good old Les Averman, just another one that I was like, well, I got to hear what Les Averman may have some stories on in regards to Mighty Ducks or something maybe from Emilio Estevez. So he has some great stories, and we're actually going to have some clips from his interview coming out here pretty soon. But Drew, of course, host of the One Headlight 90s podcast, was on there. Fantastic podcast. Go check that one out as well. Definitely recommend them. So Drew, appreciate you leaving the review. Excuse me. I really want to thank everyone else again for writing the reviews. Is honestly, they help us out tremendously. The ones on iTunes and everywhere else, because they help the podcast become a little more visible on all the platforms, not just iTunes, like on Spotify and all the Stitcher and all the other podcast apps. So, I just encourage you, if you really enjoy the podcast, just write a quick, small review. It helps us tremendously. Like, the subscribers and all that stuff, those numbers, whatever. I don't really pay attention to all of it, but when I see the reviews, that really, that makes my day when I see a good review coming from one of the listeners, because it just gives me more motivation to find that next great celebrity or come up with that next great topic that you guys might enjoy. So yeah, like I said, I appreciate the reviews. I encourage more just for visibility, just to help get the word out there for the podcast. So again, I appreciate that. But now getting into the next thing we talked about, the celebrity interviews. This year we had a ton of awesome celebrity interviews. Just to name a few, it's going to have Shane Obazinski, Tommy Repeat Timmons from The Sandlot, Raul Lewis, who was Junior from Cool Runnings, Eileen Graff, who was Bess in Ladybugs, and she also was in Mr. Belvedere, Marcus Taji, he played Marcus in Little Giants, the field goal kicker, Joey Album, he was a 90s Nickelodeon animator, Keith Coogan, Brad Kenny from Adventures in Babysitting and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, Phil Moore, the host of Nick Arcade, we did a commentary on one of the episodes, Diane Franklin, she played Princess Joanna from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And then Mark Wiener, he was another host from Nickelodeon from Wienerville. We did a commentary for one of his episodes. Of course, just talked about Matt Doherty as Les Averman from the Mighty Ducks. Then we had Stuart Pankin, who was Gordon Zielinski, or Earl, from Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, and the TGIF show Dinosaurs. And the last one we have is Brian Volkweis. He's the creator and producer from the Netflix show The Toys That Made Us, which is coming out with a new season literally within the next few days. You might even be listening to it, and it might have just come out. But season 3 of The Toys That Made Us is just coming out, and Brian and I, we talked about that. So yeah, we're just going to have some clips from all these awesome guests that we had throughout the year. So really hope that you enjoy it. This is definitely a bucket list item right here. A character from one of our favorite movies, The Sandlot, that, like we were talking about, you guys are celebrating the 25th anniversary. You guys have been busy as of recently, huh?
It's been wild, man. And yeah, thanks for having me, of course, and then thanks for keeping the spirit of the movie alive.
Of course, man.
Yeah, it's been a wild summer, man. We're all very lucky. We're having fun.
Yeah, so you've been kind of traveling all over the country, going to some of the more iconic baseball ballparks. So they kind of hold a candle to the Sandlot back in the field in Salt Lake City. That's where it's located. Is that right?
It is located in Salt Lake City, and yeah, all the baseball stadiums we've been going to are pretty awesome. Some, of course, are better than others. My favorite so far has oddly been Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, what made it so memorable?
It's like a 2-year-old stadium. It's gorgeous. It's almost like it's its own city. Like it's a mall. They have like it's hard to explain, but it's wild.
It's like its own little metropolis. Like they don't want you to leave for anything. If the wife needs to do some shopping, or if you need to get some groceries that day, you can get it in the ballpark. Basically,
you're not kidding, man. They have apartments there. They have a hotel there, dude. It's awesome. But yeah, nothing really holds the candle, as you said, to the actual Sandlot. And we were there. Me and the boys were there. I guess 2 weeks ago now. We watched the movie there with a couple fans.
I saw that, man. I'm jealous of all the people who got to experience with that with you guys. How was that? I kind of read a few things that you guys were kind of thrown back by how many people were like waiting in line and how many people were just like super excited. Of course, you've known people have loved the Sandlot forever, but to be able to see it on the Sandlot and watch it with you guys, that's like a whole nother level of experience there.
It's mind blowing. Like it's hard to explain the love and the appreciation we have for the people who make this movie part of their lives and really cherish it. But when you're there where you filmed it, and there's only 2,500 capacity, so we couldn't let everyone on there. And when they put tickets online, they went in like 11 minutes or something. Like they sold out,
man,
crazy fast. And when you're there with all those people, it's really something special. You know? And
you guys did like a Q&A, or like kind of a like during the movie commentary, or was it kind of a Q&A afterward?
We did a Q&A before the movie, and I just had a good time. You know, the whole weekend was kind of like a Sandlot weekend in Salt Lake. So they had a bunch of activities and things going on, and a carnival, and all the events led to that night at the Sandlot. So we were it was just incredible, man. Q&A before, and it was good.
Just these many behind the scenes little interviews you guys did when you're young and everything. Did you think at that point in time that these little interviews would resurface this many years later and become this huge documentary that all those kids like this, that your same age are enjoying at this point in time?
We had no clue. Like we say this a lot, and we mean it, although it sounds pretty cliche. But like we knew we made a good movie. We knew we made something people would like, and it was good for families and whatnot. No clue it would still be relevant 25 years later. And that's one of the most gratifying things about being a part of that. So those interviews we did back then, I honestly had forgotten about them until I saw them. Mm-hmm. And there's so many more things that we did then and now that we filmed for that documentary that didn't make it in the final cut, that would have just been awesome for the fans to see. But yeah, those things specifically, I forgot they existed, and I'm happy they unearthed them. Well,
maybe we'll get like a special Blu-ray edition, a Zack Snyder version of the Legends Never Die with extended versions of all the stuff you're talking about. That'd be awesome.
The Zack Snyder cut. I like that. That's funny. But I know you know about the announcement for the prequel, The Legend of the Beast, that comes out, I guess, sometime next year or maybe 2020.
I did see that. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Like, you know, we had the Sandlot 2, and then we had the Heading Home in 2005 and 2007, and then the prequel that was announced not too long ago. So, what were your thoughts? What are your thoughts on these other projects?
Sandlot 2 was great. There's no doubt that did exactly what it was supposed to do. You know, it didn't have the magic, the generational thing that ours did, but it doesn't make it any less of a great movie. And the third one, we all kind of have mixed emotions about the third one. But the prequel is where it gets interesting. We all know it's going to be about, the Beast and Mr. Myrtle and how things became what you're familiar with, the Sandlot. And I think it's going to set the tone for some other things, because I believe later this year or early next year, there'll be some news about something else, a little bigger coming out with all of us.
So I'll welcome Raul D. Lewis to the show.
What's up?
What's going on, Raul? Thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast. I know many of our listeners are stoked to hear you, especially with the recent Olympics just ending. So I appreciate you taking that time.
Did you watch that?
I mean, you can only watch so much Olympics, you know. There's only so much curling you can take, and almost so much cross country and shooting. So, do you get recognized? Does your people recognize you a little bit more once Olympics come around every 4 years?
For some reason, I get texts and tweeted and called a lot about whenever the Olympics come out. Well, how come I haven't seen you there? Everybody tells the same thing.
They think you guys have automatic bids every year just to go show up. You initially didn't audition, but you eventually worked your way into the role. Let's talk about that a little bit. You were doing the readings for other characters, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, man, you did your research.
That's what I do here. So yeah, just tell us about how you got into that. Because what kind of landed that role to do the readings?
Yeah, I was doing a play, and we lived in L.A. then. My family lived in L.A. then, so I was doing this play, and in the play, that's where the whole myth confusion comes up of where I was born, because as I was telling you, in the play, when you get a play, they give you this program. They have a program where the people in the audience look and they see, oh, there's this actor and this is what they've done before. Well, I hadn't really done shit. So,
I gotta have something.
I added all this stuff in Trinidad because I figured, who the hell is gonna check that?
And like you said, pre-Google, no one's checking.
Right. I made it up. I played a pickpocket. I was this. I had all this crap. I made up movies called Tourist Season. Made it sound all island. This Trinidad doesn't even have a big film industry, so I just made a bunch of stuff up.
You worked the system pre-Google. That's the way to do it.
Right. So I did that, but there was a lot of Caribbean stuff in my bio. Mm-hmm. And so there was a casting director there, and she saw me. And I had not that big a part in the play, but she sort of took a liking to me, and then she read all this on the bio to say, oh, he's from the Caribbean. That's interesting. And that, fortunately, all that BS paid off, because she saw the Caribbean stuff, and then she goes, hey, I want you to come in and help. She goes, can you do the accent? Is this a movie about Jamaicans? I was like, yeah, and I did the accent for her and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, that's my family. That's my life.
You just do like an uncle from the barbecue or something like that.
Exactly. And then she goes, hey, I want you to come in and help me gauge the actors, who has the best accent, who's doing it right, because we're and I was like, perfect. So I came in, I was a reader, and I want you to read in that accent, so give them the feel of it. She goes, but we're looking for known actors, so don't try to get in, don't try to read and audition for it, because readers do that.
Oh yeah.
They're reading, but they're giving it this.
That's how Harrison Ford became Han Solo. He was reading with Kurt Russell and just kind of flipped the switch on him. Yeah. So yeah, I can see where they're looking to be cautious, but hey, who's not going to try if they're that close to a role? Who's not going to put in a little extra effort?
Right.
The last thing too I want to get into about Cool Runnings was John Candy. You got to work with another comedic, iconic comedian from Canada and from America. So I'm sure filming in Jamaica or filming in Calgary, of course, he's a super icon in Canada. It's like walking around with the Beatles with him, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. That was actually pretty cool because he was the most normal celebrity, super celebrity I'd ever been around. He taught me that you could handle, fame and stuff like that and still be a regular person. Because when we were in Canada, he's getting stopped. People in
left
the
and
street,
right.
Hey John, pop. I saw him put a guy in a headlock. Because the guy
I'm sure people buying him beers left and right, that kind of stuff.
That kind of, well, they wanted to, yeah, that kind of stuff. And he walked around with an entourage, but he still was accessible. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. People would just, hey John, he was like, hey buddy, what's your name? Blah blah blah. He just talked to people.
Oh, great.
And he was just as funny and gregarious and giving as his characters. He's kind of a playful, funny guy.
He was like that charming, fun uncle that everybody wanted to hang out with, and just gave you great advice and just always making you laugh. It always seemed like in a good mood, and it would you never saw them in a bad mood type of situation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's real. I saw him. He was very protective. Mm-hmm. I remember somebody on the set, one of the ADs was yelling at us, "Come on, Yank! I told you guys." And he goes and he ripped into this guy. He was like, "Don't you ever yell at my guys like that."
I welcome actress, author, and Grammy-nominated recording artist Eileen Graff to the podcast.
Hello, podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So not only was I excited to have you on as a guest, but my wife as well. She is a huge Heart of Dixie fan.
Oh.
She claimed that she has watched it 4 times over, so she knows all the details. She's like, just tell her I said hello. She couldn't come up with a question, but she at least wanted to say hello and show her appreciation for your work on that show. You get to work with some other iconic TV actors like Tim Matheson, Reginald Bell Johnson, John Marshall Jones. You guys all get to get sprinkled in there throughout the show.
I worked with Tim, but I didn't work with the others. It just depends on who's in your episode. But Tim, in addition to being an actor, is a director, and he directed one of the episodes of Heart of Dixie that I did, and he's a really good director.
Did you give yourself any personal or external pressure? Can you live up to any expectations, especially with your father or the family at all?
Not at all. It felt very natural to me. I never really questioned whether I was going to have a career. I just assumed I would because I grew up in a world where everybody around me, all the grown-ups, had careers. I didn't know that some people failed. I didn't know that. It wasn't part of my reality. Because when you're in a situation where all of your parents' friends are in show business and they all work, you don't know people that don't work. So you don't know that it's an option to fail. So I just assumed that I would continue doing what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until much later, after I was a professional, that I realized, wow, not everybody can make a living doing this. And that's when I sort of took a moment and said, you better be grateful for this because this is rare. This is not something that just happens for most people the way it kind of just happened for me.
Yeah, like you said, it was just it's one of those things, you kind of wonder if it's better off that you didn't know that stuff, so you don't have that, maybe that expectation or that connotation that can come with it when people say they want to become actors or they want to become performers, and people know, well, it's always the first excuse is, well, not very many people make it. Like that's usually the first line that comes out of people's mouths whenever people express that they want to be a performer. Like, well, not many people make it, and so. But I think it worked either way. And for you to find out later, it worked out because you had the talent and everything that goes along with it, and so I don't think it's something you would have ever had to worry about.
Well, that's very sweet of you. Yeah, I didn't start having a problem getting work until I got older, past my 40s. And we all know statistically that the number of jobs available for older performers are not that many. So that's when things started to become challenging. But I must say, for the first 25 years of my career, things were pretty smooth. So I was very, very lucky.
Actress on Broadway, you began your television career in the late 70s, appearing in some of the most iconic shows we talked about, with like Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, Three's Company, St. Elsewhere, plenty more, before landing your major role in Mr. Belvedere. Right. Were you a fan of any of these shows before you landed roles on them?
Oh, of course. My God. In fact, we moved, my husband and I moved to LA because his name is Ben Lanzarone. He was offered the opportunity to write, he's a composer, to write music for Happy Days. So that's why we moved out. So we knew those shows really, really well and loved them. And it's incredible to guest on a show, to show up for a show, and there's all these people that you've been watching for years on TV and loving them and loving their show and loving their work, and they just accept you as one of them. It's like, oh my God, you guys, don't you realize how excited I am? And of course you don't want to be uncool, so you don't do that. But, your little kid inside of you is just jumping up and down and doing a happy dance.
Another one that I'm sure once you picked up the script, you're just kind of like, I think this is for me. I think you have a knack for these off-the-wall type of premises. It
was so silly. It was so incredibly silly, Ladybugs. We shot it in Denver, and
I didn't really know that until I was watching the opening, because I rewatched it just recently, and I literally realized the opening scene. I'm like, the Brown Palace. I've actually gone in there and ate at the restaurant, so it blew me away.
Oh, there we were. It was really madcap comedy, almost slapstick comedy, which is always so much fun to do. And apparently, it was one of the one of the first, if not the first movie that included girls soccer, and it was extremely popular with young girls who were playing sports. I had tons of girls coming up to me saying, it's the first time I ever saw girls doing on screen what I love to do, and it made me feel so good, and all of that. I said, well, that's just fantastic, to be able to stake that claim that we were able to bring girls in sports onto the screen, something that really hadn't been done very much before.
So other things too, you worked with, of course, with the comedian Rodney Dangerfield, who come off one cult classic from Caddyshack, Back to School, and now Ladybug. So were some, I feel like he's like another Robin Williams, like he's always on. So like, sort of some crazy stories about Rodney at all?
Well, I don't know that there's crazy stories about Rodney, but Rodney, he's serious. He's a serious guy. He was a very serious man. Serious about his comedy, serious about life, and yet, we would have downtime in between scenes, and I would say, "Tell me about when you used to sell windows." And he was always more than willing to engage and to tell me stories about his life. But the thing that I found most impressive about Rodney was his ability to write on the spot. We'd be in the middle of a scene, and one of the other writers was his partner, Harry. I can't remember Harry's last name right now, who wrote the movie. So we'd be in the middle of a scene, and everybody would feel like, it just needed a little something extra. And they'd say, Rodney, we need a few different lines. I need a joke here. And Rodney on the spot could come up with 5-6 jokes that would work in the scene. And they would just be able to pick one. I say, my God, how do you do that? He says, that's what I do. That's my job.
Most notably, our favorite field goal kicker on the 90s classic Little Giants. So we welcome Marcus Toji to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Hey, thank you so much again for taking the time to come on the podcast. Once we announced it, on our Twitter, people were blowing up. They're excited to hear from you. They're just like, I got to hear some more about Little Giants. Got to hear about your work with Patriot. We actually saw some episodes of that. I definitely want to get into that.
Oh, great! Yeah.
We didn't get to see every episode, but we're definitely going to get into it in more detail. So we're excited to get into that. A ton of other roles. You had 90210.
Another Christmas episode.
Oh yeah, another Christmas episode.
And Jingle All the Way.
Jingle All the Way. Yeah, we had Jingle All the Way too. Boy Meets World, Family Matters, Hey Arnold, and just plenty other ones as well. Like we just said, were you a fan of these shows before you got onto them as well? A couple of these.
90210. Like, even though I was pretty young, that was just such a phenomenon show. That I watched the show, and getting on it was pretty cool, because like all those actors were like the thing back then.
Yeah, like definitely. A lot of these shows are on during the peak of their run, so like you had great timing on these shows.
And 90210, that was a fun one. You heard about all kinds of like drama with the girls, and I feel like you could feel it on set. You weren't.
The tension was thick.
They weren't like hitting each other or anything. It wasn't like a cat fight, but all the guys were actually really cool. They were all really nice, and like you would think Luke Perry and them would be kind of maybe off-putting, but no, he was just a chill guy. He wasn't like.
Was his age difference unsettling? How much older he actually was than everybody was?
I was so young. They were already.
They all looked 40 years old to you. Yeah, at that point, we all adults looked super old at that point. Yeah. And then and Jingle All the Way too.
Put that cookie down now.
Rocking out with Arnold and Sinbad. So you got to race around the little RC car right there in the store, and it was Sinbad who slips on it. Yeah. So what was that interaction like working with those guys for that one scene?
So that was another like interesting one. The director of Jingle All the Way, Brian Levant, he did, I guess. I'm not sure if I think he's uncredited on Little Giants. He did some reshoots. And,
as the director?
Yeah, the director. As director. The director of Little Giants, he had to go edit because, he had all these things in mind. So he went to the editing, and then they brought in some this director to kind of fill in the last bits of the big game. Mm-hmm. And so he directed that bit, and when it came to doing Jingle All the Way, a lot of the kids from Little Giants were not from LA. And so I am from LA. And so I don't know what number I was on the list of who he called, but I got the call and it was just like, yeah, we need you to be a kid in the toy store and Arnold's going to steal the RC car from you. So I was like, yeah, it was the middle of summer. So it was really hot.
Oh, random.
Oh, of course. It's always usually how it is those Christmas movies. You're like, oh, they look all so cold, but it's like 97 degrees at that point.
But yeah, Arnold was gigantic. He had like a cigar, and most of the time they don't smoke indoors with kids around, but Arnold can do that. So
Arnold can do that.
Yeah, he could. I mean, this was what year was that?
95, 96 or something.
Yeah, of course, another peak situation with Arnold and
point.
Yeah, I think this is like right before Eraser, which wasn't the downturn. But I liked Eraser.
But he was still at the. I saw Eraser with my dad in the theaters. Like that was.
It's a guilty pleasure. I love that movie.
Your luggage. I auditioned for Zoltek.
I was gonna say, did you audition for other roles? Did they kind of place you where they kind of wanted? They thought you best fit.
Yeah, and so they just did a casting all these different kids, and then they brought them out to LA, and we went to Amblin, where Steven Spielberg has his office, and Schindler's List had just come out, or had just won all the Oscars.
Oh yeah.
And so we're in his office watching Hook in the private screening room until they bring groups of us out to wait in line to meet him.
Are you surrounded by Indiana Jones memorabilia and stuff like that?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's kind of amazing to be there. And so you're waiting in a line with some of the other kids, and me and Michael Zweiner, who plays Zoltek. We were just there, just hanging out in line, waiting to go meet Spielberg, who it was not lost on us who he was at that time. So he was that famous. And so we were just messing around, me and him, and I think we were doing something like the Karate Kid kick or something, just there. Right. And we get up to Spielberg. He's like, "What were you and Michael doing over there?" And we're like, "Oh, we're doing the Karate Kid kick." We're just talking, and I think he just wanted to get a sense that we're kids. That we were just playing around, just messing around. Even though I am an actor and was an actor, it was like he just wanted to know that he wasn't getting a stage child. He was getting someone who could just be a kid. And so me and Michael, we get in there, and we did seemed like 2 months of football training in Burbank.
Oh, damn.
I was going to ask if they tested your kicking skills right off the bat or not.
Actually, they did not.
Nothing but wax.
So I welcome author, producer, writer, director, and most importantly, animator Joey Album.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That introduction really made me smile.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate, again, you taking the time. Many 90s kids listening right now are thanking you through their speakers for the awesome animation you've created over the years.
Especially the mentions of Eureka's Castle and Gullah Gullah Islands.
Oh man, Eureka's Castle takes me back all the way. That's babysitter days for me.
Yeah.
So again, appreciate that. And we'll get into that kind of stuff a little bit later, but just kind of jumping right into it. Of course, most importantly, I pointed out you've been an animator basically your whole life. So at what age did you really kind of realize this is what I'm pretty good at and this is what I want to do? Was there like a certain drawing that you did? Your parents were like, "Oh yeah, you could probably do this for a little while."
I don't know if that ever. I was always drawing as a kid, so I think yes, they saw that would probably be my path. The animation probably came from growing up watching, classic Hanna-Barbera, and then blocks of the classic Warner Brothers cartoons, the Bugs Bunny and the Daffy Duck. My first thing I ever did for Sesame Street was the closing credit crawl, which you can find on YouTube. And they said to me, I was hoping to just do like a little number or the letter A or something. And they said, "We want you to do a new closing credit crawl, and we haven't done a new one in like 10 years. And we also wanted to be able to run for 10 years. Yes. So I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself for that one. I really wanted to come up with something that would last. And also I got to very first thing out of the gate, I was working with all the Muppets. So that was, yes, I did put pressure on myself, and it turned out terrific, and it did run and run, in one form or another for many years. So I think it was successful.
We talked earlier, I mentioned that I read your parts in the Nickelodeon book Slimed, an oral history of Nickelodeon's golden age. And for those who haven't read it, it's a fantastic book about everybody from like the 80s all the way up to the late 90s who are involved with Nickelodeon, all the experiences, good, awesome, bad, everything in between. So it's pretty honest, and which I enjoyed about it. I think I read it in like 5 days, which for some people, like, I can finish a book in one. I'm like, to me, 5 days is pretty quick. And so means I'm passionate about the book, so it's a good read. But in the book, you mentioned there's a part there where you mentioned about the Nickelodeon Dino Doo-Wop characters that you had created, and at this point I feel is the most iconic of all the Nickelodeon bumpers. And for those not familiar, a bumper is a brief announcement, usually 15 to 20 seconds in length between or before commercials and between programs, which all us 90s kids remember seeing before Nickelodeon shows. And of course, like I said, the Dino Doo-Wop characters were one of the ones that you were responsible for. So can you give us a story about how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. Those were done, those were produced for Nickelodeon by a company called Fred Allen, which was Fred Seibert and Alan Goodman. And most people, in animation should know Fred Seibert because he's pretty famous in animation for many things. And they had a producer named Tom Pomposello who produced all those tracks, all the doo-wop tracks. And he would go out and look for animators and contact people. And I think through a friend, he contacted me. And that's how I got to do the IDs I did for Nickelodeon, was working with Tom Pomposello for Fred and Alan.
It's such the amazing kind of cocktail of things. You have like the dinosaurs, which kids are into, the doo-wop stuff, which parents can get into, but it's just so catchy that even kids can get into. And just it being like, it's not really a commercial, because as a kid we don't know what a bumper is, but we just see these tiny little cartoons, little shorts right before our favorite programs about to come on. And to have like the doo-wop ones and just those catchy tunes and the create the animations that we wouldn't see in any of the cartoons we're watching. So it was awesome to witness those things.
Yeah, and of course it was super fun to work on. The thing that was kind of really, many parts of it were innovative, but one of the cool things, as everybody knows about the Nickelodeon logo, was that it could be anything as long as it was that orange color with those letters. So it was really, and part of the mandate of working on those was to make sure you put the logo in as many times as possible within the 10 seconds of the bumper. So it was really just a fun project.
Here's my LA conversation with actor Keith Coogan. Enjoy. So again, thank you so much. When I knew I was going to come out here, I was like, I got to meet up with Keith, see what he's been up to, see what he's got going. I saw you're going to be in San Jose next week.
Yep, we're going to go to the Silicon Valley Film Comic-Con, and a lot of great other guests.
Who else is going to be there?
Great area too. We always have great.
They just added David Tennant.
Oh, nice.
Doctor Who. Sean Astin's going to be there.
Yep.
So do you guys get to see each other when you and Sean or Will Wheaton or anybody from the other movies? You guys can meet up at the after parties or something like that, I'm sure.
It's so funny.
Especially if it's San Jose, it's so close.
Down at the end of the day. It's hard to get people to go to the after party.
Well, it's an all-day event. What time do you usually show up to set up and all that good stuff?
Like an hour, half hour before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick in and out, just get the merchandise out, get it ready.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, nice.
So they give you, like an 8-foot table and
6 foot, I think.
Yeah, 6 to 8 foot table, depending on the show.
And then, like I said, they have the after parties, but you guys are so beat at the end of it. You're like, do I really want to go? Is it, do I want to go home?
Talk to anyone after. We're like, no, we just want quiet.
Yeah, no, you've been interacting all day.
Not to rat on like shows, not that it's good or bad, but sometimes when they book a star, part of their agreement may be that it's very highly encouraged for them to go ahead and attend some of the like VIP ones or like certain parties where the fans that are paying extra for those other events would really appreciate it.
Like the meet and greet kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that they're paying
it's optional for some people, and for some people it's not optional.
You stay mostly in California because I know you came to Denver or Colorado. Do you like kind of just, is that as far east as you'll go? Or do you go all the way out to New York and all those places as well?
We were just in New Jersey. But,
New Jersey?
We haven't been too many. We'd like to do more, for sure.
Kind of pick them and choose them as they work with your schedule and like what you want to do, where you want to go kind of thing too?
Yeah, and like who you work with, like Alamo Draft House took us through Texas and Kansas. And, did we go to Denver on that one?
We did go to Denver.
Did go to Denver.
When was that?
A
couple years ago.
Okay.
We took Adventures of Babysitting.
So do some screenings all over the place?
Yeah. With like tins of film in the back of SUVs driving between
just pulling up
cities in Texas. That was fun.
Oh, nice. Well, when you do the screens, like, is it like you do Q&As all the time after, things like that? Yep. Or are you doing like providing commentary during it? Do you like kind of mix it up or anything?
No, we love to do that. Someone was going to let us do that at one, and I don't know what happened.
It didn't work out.
It's so fun to have Keith in the back with a microphone.
That's what. Yeah. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course, making my LA trip that much better. This is amazing. We've been all over the place. This is our first time out in California and all this good stuff.
It is.
Growing up in the Midwest, watching California movies, I'm like, one day it's gonna happen. So
your first time in California?
First time.
Really?
It took way too long for it to happen. So yeah, we were out here. We did all the staples. We went to you did Universal tours. We went out there.
But they didn't do yours.
No.
He's a tour guide at Sony.
What? What? If I'd have known that, I would have we would have made it happen. We would definitely made it happen. But we definitely got to hit up Hogwarts and all that good stuff out there.
Butterbeer?
Oh, I did. I got the commemorative mug to take home with me so my wife can be jealous and mad at me at the same time because we're supposed to enjoy that together, but I happened to just be there when we were trying to do the Universal tours. And yeah, it's just been a great time so far. And like, I guess you've lived here, like, what, your whole life basically? Or how, like, what would you say?
Yeah,
pretty much whole
life since I was about 5 years old.
And you lived all over the place in different areas. So what was your favorite area growing up, or just living for the time being?
Malibu.
Malibu. I imagine so.
But various places. One was a tennis change room of a bigger house. Okay. But that was, on the beach. That was nice. Then a converted porch.
Yeah.
So they'd taken a porch of one house and
like the
converted that into like
put towels over everything.
like this L-shaped single. And then a one-bedroom apartment that my parents managed. And by that time, I was working and auditioning and doing commercials and starting to do like TV shows and stuff.
Did you room with any like your co-stars and like any of those guys, like Sean Astin or Will or anybody?
Corey Haim. After I did a film with Corey Haim, he came and moved onto my couch for a couple months.
I bet that was entertaining to have.
It was very entertaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
One night it was me, Corey Haim, and John Wayne Bobbitt. They were on the hunt, man. Both of them were like, take us out, man. Take us out. I was like, all right.
Like, I think I know a few places. They knew you knew the rounds for sure. So what, like, do you still go back to those like neighborhoods, like maybe a restaurant or like anything like that? Like
if I do find myself in that town, there'll be certain diners.
Yeah, I guess like traveling over there might be
Irish
a little bit
pubs that I'll be like, I know a good spot. Yeah, I've lived in various parts of Malibu, over 26 miles of Malibu.
Okay.
About 4 or 5 places growing up, and then Santa Monica. I went to Santa Monica High School, and then lived in Hollywood, Echo Park, Lincoln Heights, Burbank, Glendale.
Everywhere.
The whole shebang. And you?
I have an ice cream headache.
You lived here as well? Your whole life? Almost?
I have an ice cream headache.
The margarita was that good.
Yeah.
It was too good. It got you.
It went too fast.
Well, like I said, we definitely hit up some of the staples, but I wasn't sure if you had some like we got one more day in our bag, so we wasn't sure if there's anything like you had any recommendations. We're like off Sunset and like Seward. We didn't go to Disneyland. Because we were coming in because we were thinking about like doing the WB studio tour or the Universal. Everyone's like, do Universal. It's the best one. Do you agree? Is that the better one, I guess, of the ones you know of?
No.
Yeah. They all have different things. I guess it depends what you like or what
Yeah,
you're into.
I really like practical sets, like that kind of behind the scenes type of stuff. So seeing that like Hogwarts and
go
all
through a
that
back
stuff.
lot, see those facades, all of their rides.
So how many different times in your life did you go on these tours or to Disneyland in certain different states of mind to enjoy these different things going on?
It is not recommended to enter the park under any influence of anything.
Yeah, of course.
But there are books I have read that are like naughty things that have happened in certain parks out there.
I'm joined by the host of Nick Arcade, the man, the myth, the 16-bit legend, Phil Moore.
I'm a legend in my own mind, man. Great
and to a lot of other people's as well.
Dude, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming back, taking the time. I know you've been a busy man, but thanks for taking the time to come on today.
My pleasure, man. Oh, dude, it's my absolute pleasure, man. Yeah, I just came back from, matter of fact, today is my first full day back home, and yet I've been in it only in the time it took to sleep last night, man. But you know what? You contacted me about doing something unique. I got to tell you, man, nobody's ever asked me to do what it is that you and I are about to do. So despite this being like, something I've done for years, I'm in like virgin territory, man. Be gentle with me.
Beautiful. Hey, we're going to take it one step at a time. So I'm excited to do this. I'm glad this is a unique thing. I thought it was going to be a great thing for all the listeners to just get a peek behind the curtain of what made this show so awesome. If, on top of you being the host, let's find out what else made the show so awesome. Did you write any of these questions that you have to ask, or all writers take care of that?
Writers took care of everything. Look, let me explain something. This is season 1. Nick Arcade was the first TV show that I ever did. So all I was really trying to do was learn how to do TV. As a matter of fact, this episode actually comes shortly after I started doing the songs. Like, I didn't do the little singing in the songs from the very beginning. That slowly and gradually became a part of the show. Because if you notice, I'm not really doing it a lot in the beginning, but as we get later on, especially when we get to the video challenge, I'll be doing it then, But split screen, this was a fun one. I was really surprised that we didn't do split screen a lot more. I thought it was a really great puzzle. And I don't know, it didn't get used a lot. I don't know if it was because, they do focus groups to see what people like. And maybe that was something that didn't test well. All of this stuff with respect to the creation of the show, the questions, the puzzles, I was 100% zero involved in any of that. I mean, like I said, I was a newbie, man. I was an absolute newbie season 1. And it was everything I could. I took everything in me to just remember the show. I had no cue cards. I had no teleprompter. You see me look down every now and then at my podium, and that's to read a little index card basically telling me the answers. But everything else, man, that's
pretty much on your own. You're just kind of not winging it, but you're on your own
exactly.
out there.
So good thing, like in this case, we've got the questions on a card, and it got to the point where, depending on where Mikey was going, since each episode was themed, I would kind of like have a little fun and try to get into the spirit or whatever theme. So Mikey's like sort of in medieval times, so that's kind of like why I'm in medieval times right now, in my like it and look it and read it and all of that stuff,
Oh yeah, definitely enjoyed incorporating those things. So like when you went Western or things like that, always enjoyed it. Definitely. And then so like when I guess so yeah, I always want to talk about the prices. So did they give you just what happened to the leftover prizes? Were they used for the next one, or were like, we got an extra Casio?
Here's the thing, leftover. Like, we didn't have like a warehouse of the prizes there at the studio. You won your prizes, and then we would contact the company or the manufacturer or the store, and then it'd be mailed to the people. So there really wasn't any quote-unquote leftovers because they never really were there. I mean,
they were never there,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like there was we would have one in to do a promo shot so that when we said what the prize was, you could see a picture of it. But it wasn't like, go down to hall 4 and pick up your keyboard, kid. It's like, no, it would be sent to them later, so it wasn't really there. The feeling of how they produced the shows felt way ahead of its time. It felt very much like YouTube now. You know what I mean? It was like a bunch of people and we just rolled with it. Whatever happened. We just rolled with it. And it was something really cool. Right. Figure it out as you go and just let it happen. And that's why I can understand why now podcasts and YouTube and stuff are very popular, because it's that same kind of feel. It was the same vibe,
Oh yeah, no, we, like I said, especially with the Nostalgic podcast, we just like to show our appreciation for the shows that just made our childhoods a little more awesome, especially Nickelodeon with all the game shows, Nick Arcade on top of all of them. Like I said, I used to watch it every week, get down on some Nick Arcade, watch it, get in the zone, and just be jealous of all those kids who got to do all that, play the games, and watch you rock it out. So of course, we the whole generation of 80s and 90s kids can't thank you enough.
Oh, Carlos, man, look, it was my absolute pleasure. Look, I'm really thankful that I was able to do the job and then got the job and then turned around and found out, here we are all of these years later, that it meant so much to so many people. So I'm humbled by it, man. 90s fans and Nick Arcade fans, the best on the planet. I just came back from doing MagFest, like I said, they did sort of a tribute show to Nick Arcade called Versus. I was hosting the show. We had 4 people up on stage. It was like an hour show that we did live in front of people. Nice. It was like Nick Arcade all over again, and everybody in the audience, standing room only, every performance, they stopped and said, oh my gosh, it was like my childhood again. Like the moment that I said, you're going to run into our 4 Ps: points, puzzles, pop quizzes, and prizes. And the audience
everybody went crazy.
It was so much fun, man. It was so much fun. So I appreciate, Be Kind Rewind, you, and every 90s kid out there, man, because if it wasn't for you, hey, look, there would be nothing for me to talk about today.
So I welcome actress, author, and producer Diane Franklin to the podcast.
Well, hello. It's very, very lovely for you to introduce me as Princess Joanna.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear one of your many accents that you're so talented to possess.
Thank you. I have a funny thing to tell you about Princess Joanna, which is hilarious to me. When I did Bill and Ted's, I was actually playing Princess Elizabeth.
No way. Yes way.
But someone in the credits got it wrong and wrote me as Princess Joanna. So when they did Bill and Ted's 2, you will find that Princess Elizabeth I'm back, the character's back to being Elizabeth. And
they switched it back?
They switched it back. And then now they're going to do a third Bill and Ted's. And it's called Bill and Ted's Face the Music. And they're going to do it next year. And I may be in it. So I'm not going to get into for sure, but it's a possibility.
Excellent.
And the funny thing is that I was talking to the writer and I said, well, I'm Princess Joanna in the first one. And he said, no, I would never put I would never put Ted with Joanna. I would put him with Elizabeth, and I thought that was hilarious because
I was gonna say, so what are they gonna list you at if you're in the movie?
I have a feeling. I mean, if it works out, I think I'll be Princess Elizabeth. So that'll be hilarious. I mean, that would be
well, fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. The mystery will continue until we see. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. People are definitely excited once the news has been kind of trickling out over the last few years. But we got a lot of news recently about pre-production and getting into actually filming. So that's the awesome part to hear.
It's gonna go. And I'll tell you something. I think it's very hard because once word gets out, people are so excited, and then it's hard because people, filmmakers do not want the word to get out too soon, because if something happens, then they're like, oh no, or maybe they wanted to try to get someone and they couldn't. And but I'm telling you, I really think it's going to go, and I have I've heard nothing but it's going to go, and I think it'll be awesome. It'll be totally excellent. Whether I'm in it or not, I have to say, it's a great film for the upcoming generation to watch. And if you haven't seen it at all, go watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. And I play the English princess, Keanu's girlfriend, and or Babe, or medieval princess Babe. And and you'll love it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Of course, and I've been enjoying it since its release back in '89, of course, and like you said, with the new one coming out, you guys have the best champion with it, with Keanu Reeves being, where he is in Hollywood now, and being like, he is like full throttle into this. Like, he wants this to happen just as much as everybody else, and so that really is helping along with this, I'm sure.
And he and Alex really want us to be in it. I know that there is a role, there is a part written for us, but I can't be presumptuous. The last time when they did Bill and Ted's 2, Kim and I really thought, the other princess, Kimberly Cates, we thought, we're going to be brought up again. We're going to be brought in, and the guys wanted us, but they had a different director, and the director wanted to go with other girls. And my assumption was that maybe they just didn't want the guys to be like, they didn't want it to be Bill and Ted and the princesses like as a show. They wanted to be Bill and Ted, and they want to keep it like, not like the princesses aren't, completely the princesses. They're like, not like, it's just about the guys. And I think that I understand it's a buddy movie, and, and I think, it's fine. I would just say, I really, I know that it would be so much fun for us to be reunited. And I think it would be great for the audience. I think the audience really wants to see the princesses back. And it's sort of like a nod, so we're crossing our fingers. We're crossing our fingers.
The nostalgia, I think everybody, if they took a vote, the princesses from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure would win over on Bogus Journey, so to bring you guys back for the Bill and Ted 3. No problems there. Aww. So we're hoping to cross our fingers. Then we'll get to hopefully see you in an upcoming one. Or just do you have any information on like any potential release dates they're trying to do at all, or anything like that?
I don't know about any release date, but I do know that the story is with Bill and Ted obviously grown up and married and have kids, and I just think it's funny that. It is really funny to think that Bill and Ted's grew up. I think that's just a great vision of like, well, what happens to those people? What happened to those kids that are like start off like that, and then like, how do they grow up? What kind of life do they have? So that I just think is really juicy, and I got some ideas. I found out a little bit from the script, and I can't say it, but I think the audience will not be disappointed. You're going to laugh, but the movie will probably focus on the next generation, of Bill and Ted's, the next little Bill and Ted. So whatever there is, so you'll see. But I just think it's really great that people remember the film. I think for me it was my biggest commercial hit, and I'm just honored to be associated and for people to remember me from that. It's just a lovely piece of lovely film and great comedy and great message. Be excellent to everyone.
Joining me this episode to provide his encyclopedic knowledge of Wienerville, because he was there, is none other than writer, voiceover actor, producer, comedian, and puppeteer. So I welcome host of Wienerville, Mark Wiener, back to the show.
Thank you, Carlos. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you again for, like I said, taking the time to come on today. I posted something on Twitter, and I know that people have just been blowing up and clamoring for some of these behind the stories from Wienerville, because we all enjoyed it on 90s Nickelodeon, 90s Nick and Afternoon back in the day.
Well, I'd like to thank all of your viewers for watching Wienerville. We really appreciate it. We had a lot of fun making it, and we appreciate that you're still even interested in it.
Like I said, once we posted on Twitter, people were they were all excited. They can't wait to hear and see what kind of stories we get out of the episode. So, but before we get into the episode itself, for those who maybe didn't get a chance to listen to the podcast when you were first a guest on the podcast about a year ago, maybe get them a little more backstory on how Wienerville came to at Nickelodeon, your journey getting it created and produced with Nickelodeon.
So, I had a game show called That's Not Fair. Let's see the.
Oh yeah, and with that the gold and silver hot dogs back there as well.
Absolutely, available in the Wienerville store.
Ooh, we'll be linking that immediately.
Okay, no, so I had this game show in my stand-up act called That's Not Fair, and what I would do is I would put a puppet body on me, and then I would bring up two people from the audience, and they would be full size. And I had that That's Not Fair sign over me, and I would ask them these stupid questions, and I make up all the rules, and it was just a fun game. And Comedy Central and the Hot Channel, it was two, I think it was the Comedy Channel and the Hot Channel. So you had two stations. They come together to make Comedy Central, what we have now. But they saw my game show, and they made a pilot out of it. It was their very first pilot. And we shot it, and, with my Wienerville characters, and all in the early stages. But it was, and then they tested. I actually found the test group report. I have all the scripts and everything from the show and all these old things and some of the earlier TV shows that I did. And that character Wilson was also brought. He's here with me now without his beard.
We got the military style, right. Wilson.
But Wilson, wait a minute, is built on. This is the original Wilson.
There he is.
Yeah. And then we went to Nickelodeon, and then they constructed these. The artist Dave Jordan, amazing, Wavy Davy is the puppeteer.
I'm sure he earned that name in multiple ways.
Right. He's great.
So like for a process of like rehearsals, how many like rehearsals do you have for the show before you guys record it for the live audience and things like that?
I don't think we pre-taped all of the television inserts, like Dottie, Cocktail Frank, and then I would walk up, just as we are seeing here, and I would walk over, and those are live puppets. That's a pre-record, and I would walk over to Dottie, and she's a pre-record.
And you guys have to have that timing down. That's another thing too I wanted to point out, is just like that's not something too many people do, like for their for the comedic timing, is the banter back and forth with someone in their own character, back and forth. And like you said, with the timing of you say your lines and you got to make sure you're timing with her lines, right. And she's saying it, so it just worked out perfectly and it was great.
Well, what we would do is we'd have someone standing off to the side of me who would pretend to be me as I was doing it, so we worked the timing out. And there's Wienerville. There is the parallel world. Yeah.
Do you happen to have any of those Wienerville jerseys laying around as well?
I do. I have a box of them.
Are they on the website as well?
Not yet. No, you see, all the Wienerville stuff was stored at Universal Studios, and then as Nickelodeon started, shrinking down there, they called me up and said, "Do you want all the stuff?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So they sent,
exactly.
They sent 2 tractor trailer trucks up to my studio, and it was one of the happiest days of my life,
And ever since, this stuff's been set up in your basement.
Well, no, I had large studios over the years, and then set it up, and then we shot some other specials out of my studio, but it was a really large space. And but then over the years, I had to start paring it down and throwing some of this away.
Is this pre-eBay? You could have made a killing on eBay or at some point, maybe on some of that stuff. Probably all of it.
I still have a lot of stuff which we're gonna put it out there.
For my guest, who is best known for his role in the Mighty Ducks franchise as Les Averman, as well as many other roles while playing his tunes with his silky smooth voice. So I welcome back Matt Doherty to the podcast.
Hey Carlos, good to be here on the World Wide Webbage.
It's awesome, man. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for coming back. Just real quick, just to catch up with you, since the last time we spoke, it's been about a year or so. So, what have you been up to? You've been, I know you've been playing, you've had some music. You've been playing any shows or anything else?
So it's been a year. That means we've rotated around the sun.
We have the full rotation.
And I had no cognitive knowledge of that. That's quite incredible. Yeah, I've just been, doing what we do out here in Hollywood land, which is, I mostly just write, and so I occasionally come out of my writing hole, and then wave what I've written around, and it's kind of like breadcrumbs, and then somebody picks it up and goes, "Hey, I like this," and sometimes they don't, and that's generally what I've been doing.
I mean, if it works, it works. So, do you have anything in particular that you're excited about that you kind of?
Well, the Russians might be listening, and they've already, and that's actually the main reason why I haven't. Why I can't do the Skype thing is actually I think my Skype account has been hacked. So we can't
be having the bots.
No, I don't want to have like the Russian spam bots.
Understandable.
There's only one less Averman,
Exactly, totally understandable.
I've been writing a lot of assignments and then some stuff for myself and so that's pretty much. But I can't really talk about too much because they always tie you up with paperwork. So I mean. I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, and I'm not very big, and I'd probably lose that.
I mean, I'm not either, so no one would know if I was gone.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, you got that like towering disposition when you did the introduction. I thought maybe you were a big dude.
It's all bravado.
It's all relative. It's all relative and bravado. Yeah.
The last poll we did was which was the better goalie, with Julie the Cat or Goldberg. Julie the Cat had 89% overwhelming. People were in favor.
I mean, I agree with her flat out skill level, but see what I think Sean or Goldberg had, or the original name was a Took, by the way. Goldberg was originally intended to be a Alaskan native named the Took, so we would all.
Oh wow!
Oh yeah, which was really funny. So then we changed it to Goldberg, or Steve Brill did, right? But we used to call Sean a Took, but. He had the ability, like any good athlete, to like Muhammad Ali, to get in people's heads. He knew how to, which is like, maybe he didn't have the glove.
Down.
Yeah, maybe he didn't have the glove that Julie the Cat had, or the stick speed, or he left the 5-hole open, but he had the sense of getting in his other teams' heads and making some psychological.
He had the charisma.
The mind. When you mess with when catchers talk to the batter right before they hit. You know what I mean? It's like he just had the ability to get in there.
No, you're totally right. So they did have these similar but opposite sort of talents that could be utilized. So I think people are, they're not giving Goldberg the credit he deserves, but probably from sheer athletic prowess
you gotta give the Cat at the time. Man.
Do you still have any of the jerseys you got for the movies?
Oh, yeah. I never. It's funny. The first Ducks, which are the green one, I never got one of those. The original green ones, the District 5 ones.
Mm-hmm.
They were like under lock and key, man. I couldn't. I
figured those were like actual District 5, like somebody's.
But I have gotten off the internet. Like you can buy. People will make them, and I'm sure they're made in China somewhere. But I have one of those, which is great.
I've seen there's a couple.
They're great.
Online.
I've seen them a lot. But I did get. They did give me. I got the one from the second Ducks, and I have a Team USA one as well. And then
the good old Hendrix.
Did I have one? Did I have one from the third Ducks? I'm not sure.
Was it the Warriors? Is that
the Warriors?
Yeah.
The Warriors, yeah.
Well, I mean that's a memorable one, but not as the first. Like the first one and the USA Ducks as well.
The original Ducks one from the second movie is one of my most prized possessions. So
it's iconic. It's iconic, man. It has to be. I'm telling you, that's that symbol.
And I actually played in it. I mean, that was like the one I wore and skated in. So jerseys can get a little beat up. So it's cool.
Well, there you go. Now, moving on to the next one, we have TFGIF podcast. At TFGIF podcast says, what's the weirdest reaction someone has had after recognizing you in a non-professional setting, that is, and how did you react back?
Well, reaction, I think it would be an allergic reaction. Like when people are allergic to cats, they just sneeze.
Like a sneeze? Yeah.
I think they just sneezed a lot and they get really puffy red eyes, and you just try not to take that personally. So.
I mean, that's the best reaction if you just want someone to just be stunned and leave you alone, or just to be like, yeah, I don't know what just happened. Sneeze on them.
I think the funniest thing would be when I actually ran into Mike Vitar, who was actually a Duck, and I had a day job at the time, And okay, so you want to get real? We'll get real honest here. I'll tell you the real.
Let's do it.
This is the real fun thing, because not everything's all bread and roses, and all the time for us. Everybody thinks that it's all cake, right? Which it isn't. But I remember having a job at one point, and it was one of these thankless jobs, and I was giving change, and I was just like Averman in Ducks 2 when he's giving tickets out, in the beginning. I wasn't working at a movie theater with a bow tie,
yeah.
where the quack attack is back, Jack. It wasn't none of that, but I was doing a gig, and I'm going to give the change, and there's Mike with his family, and we hadn't seen each other in years. And Mike's a fireman. I think he's a fire captain now, and he had his kids in the back of his car. And I still remember, we both looked at each other with this like art imitating life moment, because I was like, here I am giving change. And then we both smiled, and then it was like, and we had this great moment. But to me, it's just so surreal, because he was literally, we were good friends and grew up together and all that too. So
yeah,
and then we caught up about family and all that. But that to me is my favorite moment.
Joining me is the man we've been seeing and hearing in an astonishing amount of our favorite movies, theater, and television shows for decades, lending his voice, dramatic, and comedic chops to each role, especially in this one as the classic Gordon Salinsky. So I welcome back to the show, Stuart Pankin.
Hey, great to be back, Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it coming back on today. We're just going to jump right into it. So we're going to get into what you've been up to, into what this movie's about. So if you're ready, Stuart, and everybody else is ready, we can just do the countdown and get into it. So you're ready?
I'm with you.
Well, the moms can relate, because look at the trip here, that these two moms, they want to get away. They're like, we got these crazy kids, let's get away for 2 days, which is, I wouldn't consider a vacation, but as a mom, anything more than an hour away from your kids is probably considered a vacation. So Robin Bartlett too, being the over eccentric mom, she's got the blocks underneath the tires to make sure that the car doesn't roll away. And we all have had that mom who's a little over the top, but for good reason. They're just they paranoid about the kids, but yeah, it's just kind of those good relatable characters.
Yeah, all these kids. I mean, Allison Mack grew up to be in Supergirl, and she works a lot. I actually ran into Allison Mack in a restaurant years later, and she was with, I guess, her boyfriend, her husband, and father. And I said, Allison Mack, I am your father. And she goes, she sort of backed away, and then I reminded her about the movie.
Did you enjoy the first two movies before getting involved with this one, or is this something that kind of was new to you?
No, the first, I actually read for the first movie.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Being the part, I forget who ended up doing the neighbor. I read for the neighbor and got close, didn't get it. And then, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's why they called me in for this thing. The second one, I enjoyed them all. I thought they were very clever. I always enjoyed watching the technology. Although I'm sure nowadays, if they did it, the technology would be more than it was then. What'd you say, 97?
Yeah, 97. Well, yeah, and the second one was like 90, 91, 92. Or first one was what, 91, I believe. I can't remember which year that was.
I don't either. Don't ask me movie stuff. You're the expert.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If I'm stumping myself, then I'll understand. If you don't know as well. I guess Chevy Chase and John Candy were supposed to be Wayne in the first movie, but John Candy suggested Rick Moranis, so that kind of a fellow Canadian help each other out.
They're joined at the hip. Those Canadians.
Right into the belly.
This is my first porno film.
Yeah. I mean, do you get paid extra for the stag films in the 90s?
only if you glow.
You gotta sign the glowing clause, and you get that little extra bump.
It was. I remember, looking at Rick now, how nice it was to work with somebody that I've admired for a lot of years. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, and he was SCTV, and then
he was SCTV, and that's it.
Well, then, I mean, it feels like it's like this, like with the Saturday Night Live and with you on HBO. You know, you guys just kind of rise through the ranks and, you know, cutting your teeth on some of these earlier shows.
Yeah, well, not necessarily the news and SCTV were sort of around the same time. Excuse me, and we used to run into each other. But the other ironic thing is, I mean, I read for the first Honey We Shrunk Ourselves, and I also read for the character that Rick eventually played in Ghostbusters, the first and the second Ghostbusters. I read for that guy.
For Louis Tully.
Again, close but no cigar. Yeah, this is interesting. Our paths, you know, somehow not only cross, but they
meet, intersect, and
then go away.
So joining me is the creator and producer of The Toys That Made Us, as well as fellow toy collector. So I welcome Brian Volkweiss to the podcast.
Hello, how you doing?
Doing amazing, even better that you're here. So again, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. How you doing today?
My pleasure, man. I'm doing great. Very kind to say, and excited to be talking with you.
Well, I mean, as a toy collector, like you said, you probably already had at least 100 seasons in your head when you're probably getting this already. So what was the process of selecting these toy lines to like really narrow it down?
You know, I was very blessed in that Netflix, Netflix is a great company. I've never worked with anybody better. And, you know, one of the things with them, which is really smart, is it's really hard to sell them shows. But once they buy it, they really trust the artist. And once the show was greenlit, they really let me choose the toys we made. And, you know, I didn't choose anything ridiculous. Like, you know, I didn't do Visionaries or,
I was wondering which ones didn't quite make the table. Yeah.
What's that?
I would have taken Dino Riders. Yeah, I was wondering which ones didn't quite make the table. You had to skirt a little bit.
Yeah, two of the ones that didn't make the table we are doing in season 3. So we're luckily being able to make them now. But, originally it was 10, then it became 8. And like I said, they just kind of left me alone. The only episode I freely admit was a guilty pleasure was Star Trek. And that episode I was worried about, but has actually been received incredibly well. I read the comments on everything. I'm on the boards. You know, I go to Reddit, so I read everything. And I was worried about Star Trek for a variety of reasons, but 97% of what I've read has been some degree of positive. I'm like a spaceship lasers guy. Like, I love spaceships and lasers and that kind of stuff. I'm not like a swords and sandals kind of guy. So my impression of He-Man, and this is why I never watched it, was because I thought it was just swords and sandals. When I was producing the episode, it was very interesting to learn, yes, it's sword and sandals, but there's also lasers and spaceships. And I'm like, oh, all right, maybe if I had known that, I would have been into it. But I mean, it's a weird, and I feel like we conveyed this well in the episode, but I mean, it's a weird toy. I mean, and the episode makes it very clear why it's so weird that, you know, everybody was like just coming up with crazy ideas and there was no idea too crazy. And that, you know, none of the people look the same, you know, like it's just probably one of my favorite moments in the entire first 2 seasons is the story about how Battle Cat was created, you know, that
yeah, I remember that.
Falling over laughing. You can even hear me. There are several times in the first 8 episodes you can hear me laughing in the background. That is one of those times.
Yeah, and as a kid, you know, we don't even think twice about how any of these names came about or how these characters are created, what they look like. But in retrospect, you know, you're just like, why didn't we, you know, maybe second guess a few of these names or a few of these, you know, characters? But we loved them all. We were kids. We had fun with them. We didn't second guess any of that stuff. But to learn these things now, it's just so interesting. And I mean, it doesn't really change that much. It's just we just know that much more about, you know, the characters that we grew up loving. So yeah, I was just interested on, you know, like you said, having all that insider information, you know, what other interesting facts you may run into to while doing all this research about the things you love and about things that you may not have been as interested in as well. So those are cool things to find out as well. Talking about Kipling, like he's an interesting personality. You had a variety of them as well, with all the the creators and everybody else, and all the competitive claims on who created who and what toy line was better than what. So how did you guys handle maybe any false or misleading claims or anything like that?
One of the things that we did, every show I've ever produced, until Toys That Made Us, is, you're always looking for the drama or the scoop or people crying or people getting angry, and that was great stuff to have in your show. This was the first show where we have interviews of people. We interviewed this one guy who was fired from Hasbro, and it's like 30 years later, whatever. He's still so angry. And in the interview, he was very angry, and then he just started sobbing. And it was just this really powerful but very sad moment. I was crying. Everybody was crying during or tearing up, I should say. I mean, it was really tough. And every other show I've ever produced, that would have not only made it into the episode, that would have been at the beginning of the episode. But that's not the show that I wanted to make for this. I wanted to make a show that was, because it's about toys. So you don't want to have people sitting there on Christmas morning turning on a show about how much they loved G.I. Joe and He-Man when they were kids, seeing a guy crying about losing his job 30 years ago.
Next one, we got Puppets. At Puppets says, any chance of getting an episode on McDonald's Happy Meal toys or Smurfs? I think that'd be interesting. Love this series.
Happy Meal toys, I will say this, Happy Meals toys now is at the top of my list for if Netflix greenlights more seasons, is Happy Meal toys. That's my number one episode I want to do. Smurfs, I have to do more I don't know anything about the Smurfs. So, one of the things that's a criteria for the toys we pick is how many, is the story a good one? So I'd have to do research on Smurfs. And I also have to find out, I know Smurfs is huge in Europe. I know Smurfs had a brief run in the U.S., but I have to make sure it's, a very popular toy. If we're blessed enough to get to season 8 or 10 or whatever, then we could take more risks.
So last one we got here is from our co-host Dylan Hood. So would you do 90s outdoor toys like Nerf, Skip It, and Moon Shoes?
Nerf, without a doubt. It's a great story. The creation of Nerf, everything about Nerf is really interesting. Also, major criteria for us is that the toy be in production nonstop. So that Nerf, not only has Nerf been in production for I think 30 to 40, at least 30, maybe 40 years, never stopping. It's one of Hasbro's biggest brands. I mean, it's a huge brand, huge. Most people don't realize how big it is. It provides a ton of profit for Hasbro, ton.
All right, so those were some of our nostalgic celebrity interviews from this year. So tune into each episode for full conversations to find out more about these celebrities from movies and TVs growing up. Also, stay tuned as our upcoming celebrity guest that we'll be having, that we do have confirmed, is the 90s Nickelodeon game show host, Wild and Crazy Kids, Donnie Jeffcoat. And then also we're going to have Nickelodeon alumni Michael Bauer, aka Donkey Lips from Salute Your Shorts. So he'll be just around the corner as well. So check out the episode of Venus DeMilo Thomas, who played Telly from Salute Your Shorts. She gave us some great behind-the-scenes stories as well. But we'll be having Donkey Lips and Donnie Jeffcoat from Nickelodeon's Wild and Crazy Kids and Salute Your Shorts coming up. So I'm pretty pumped about that, because I've always been a huge fan of Wild and Crazy Kids. I got to pick his brain on like how they came up with all these amazing and awesome off the wall the contests, the challenges, and all that good stuff. Talked to Michael Bauer, Donkey Lips, about all the cool stuff that they did on Salute Your Shorts, and maybe he might have some other stories that Venus wasn't able to give us as well. So we're gonna have plenty more celebrity interviews in 2019. So those will be announced very soon. So these are the 2 that we have lined up here, coming up here pretty soon. But really, that was this week's episode. So I want to thank everyone again for listening every week, and stay tuned as we're going to keep the nostalgia alive with more awesome episodes with 80s and 90s topics, celebrity interviews, and fact-filled movie commentaries. So thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast. Make sure you tune in every Throwback Thursdays for new episodes of the podcast. Subscribe and rate us all podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Infirmary Media Podcast Network. Also, follow the podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Be Kind Rewind Pod for all of your nostalgic needs. So thanks, and be excellent to each other.
You're listening to
Infirmary Media. Did you hear that?
Infirmary Media.
Infirmary. Is anybody there?
Docking complete.